Alright, so tonight's lesson is lesson 89, and we are analyzing prisms. Now we've talked about prisms before, we've talked about a bunch of these shapes, but we're going to really focus on the prisms this time. So today in class you got a little square of 6 different types of prisms, so you should have that glued or taped into your notebook. A prism, when we're talking about a prism, it's a 3-dimensional solid with 2 congruent bases. The bases are always parallel, so that means like if we drew a straight line from them, they would never, ever, ever touch. The shape of each pair of bases can be any polygon, meaning any sided shape. The shape of the base determines the name of the prism. So if we look here, our base right here is a triangle, so it's a triangular prism. Our base here is a rectangular, so it's a rectangular prism. Okay. So the word base doesn't have to be, we've kind of learned that base is the bottom of something, of a shape, but it does not always have to be the bottom, because you can turn a shape any way. So the bases in our picture right here are the front and the back of the figure. So we look at them so we are able to name them, because we can see that front shape to tell us the name of the prism. Okay, and the names also, like this is a pentagon here, which means it has 5 sides, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, and a hexagon, and then octagon too. Okay, so make sure you have the definition of prism, and you have your little chart in front of you, because you will use that to help you with your homework. You'll use it to help you with your notes. You can go back to it and to help you study. So our lesson today will be pretty quick. We just have a few things to look at. We're really just pointing out the different sides of your shape. So, number 1, which prism, A through F, our prisms are labeled by letter, have all parallel rectangular faces. So we're looking for a face so we looked at our base, which is the bottom, which is the shape that we're looking at, but we want to know which have all parallel rectangular faces. So go ahead, kind of take a guess. What do you think? Not their face, but has all rectangular, parallel. All their faces are parallel. Okay? A lot of them have rectangular faces, but they're not all parallel. If you look at B, your rectangular prism, okay, here, this might be a square in front, but this top rectangle is going to be parallel with that bottom rectangle. They're going to go on together and never touch. Same with this side and the other side. So figure B would be our answer. So I'm going to just put B as our answer. If we consider the front and the back of the rectangular prism as bases, so that front and that back, then we see 2 other pairs of parallel rectangular faces. The top and the bottom faces, and the left and the right. Okay, so that's what we kind of described. Alright, which prisms, A through F, have congruent faces, and how many? So what I want you to do is put A, B, C, D, E, and F, and then tell me how many congruent faces do they have. Okay, so you're not looking at the bases really, you're just kind of looking at the sides, okay? How many pairs of congruent faces do they have? Alright, I'm going to do the first one with you, so then maybe you can do the rest by yourself and then pause it and check to see if you got it right. Okay. I'm starting with prism A, and I'm going to see how many congruent faces. This has 2. There are 2 congruent rectangular faces. Since 2 sides of the rectangular base are the same length, then you're going to have those 2 rectangles as congruent. They're going to be the side. Now we're not talking about parallel like we did before, because these 2, this rectangle right here and the rectangle on the other side, the rectangle, right here, and then the rectangle on the other side of the triangle, they're going to be congruent, meaning they're going to match and be the exact same, but they're not parallel, because obviously, look, they touch right here. Okay, but they're congruent, they're the same because they're from a triangle, and that triangle has 2 even sides, the same. Alright, so I put 2 congruent faces. Okay, let's go to B. Now look at B, okay, up here, and we want to know how many congruent rectangular faces does this shape have? All right, it would have 4 congruent rectangular faces. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Let's put 4 congruent. All right, since the bases are squares, it makes everything else congruent. It'll be the same. All right, go ahead, look at C and see how many congruent faces does C have. Again, this one's kind of like A. Since the bases are trapezoids, okay, we only have 2 congruent rectangular faces. So if you look at this one's going to be congruent to this side over here. Now this top one isn't going to be congruent with the bottom one because it's smaller at the top of our trapezoid and bigger at the bottom of our trapezoid. So that would not be congruent, but these 2 sides are, the left and the right, are congruent. So we're going to put 2 congruent faces. Okay, now we're going to look, actually, the last 3, D, E, and F, okay? They all, if you look at D, E, and F here, they have all rectangular faces congruent. Since all of their bases are polygons, all of these sides, this is going to be congruent, 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 congruent. All of these are rectangles and they're all equal to each other, okay, because they're polygons. This has 5 sides, okay, 6, and then 8. So they are all actually congruent. So you can write that down. D, E, and F are all congruent, all of those sides. Now these are just the faces, they're not the bases. The bases are that shape that we see, okay? But we're talking about the rectangles, faces that are congruent. So that would be all of them. So 5, and then 6, and then 8. All right. Here is your lesson practice. Number 1 is a rectangular prism has how many pairs of parallel faces? And then 2, I drew a shape to the best of my ability. What is that shape? Okay, and use your little chart at the top to help you figure it out. And how many edges does it have? Now, if you have to go back and look at your notes to remember what an edge is, but you need to write down what is the shape and how many edges does it have.